serve under your chairmanship. In Windsor, we are very lucky, and I am proud to represent some of the finest state and independent schools in this country. One has already been mentioned. It's very prominent, but it's not really that reflective of the situation in my constituency. You see, in my 2 errands that I ran, constituency visits this morning before I came into Parliament, I just counted the independent schools I passed. I passed 6, because 23% of the pupils in my constituency attend independent schools. And that caricature that my right honourable friend, the member for East Hampshire, mentioned was always in the papers when independent schools are discussed, does not reflect 23% of the parents in my constituency. Very often, recently, in my surgery years, I had parents there who are really struggling with this proposed policy. Their parents, often both working. One of the parents has often taken on a second job. They've remortgaged the house in many instances. They've gone without. And frankly, in many instances, sometimes their marriages are under pressure. And I'm concerned about their parents, those parents and those children. But because we've got such a high percentage of independent schools in my constituency, that means it's not just them that are affected, even though they might be most directly affected. The displaced children hit my state schools. And that means that it's our state sector that is bracing for an influx of children that they will struggle to accommodate. And that's why I think this is a false choice. It shouldn't be state versus independent. Our schools are an ecosystem, and they are all valuable. Because after all, education is a public good. It promotes social mobility, it strengthens our economy, and it benefits society at large. No other country in the world tries to tax it. And when they have tried, as in Greece, where it only lasted for 4 months, it massively backfired. In fact, many developed countries actually look to subsidise independent education to promote parental choice and drive up school standards. So in this way, the government is unique in its policy and, frankly, unique in its vindictiveness. And whenever Labour hikes taxes, there are unintended consequences. Just as their jobs tax is hitting charities and hospices, so too their tax on independent schools will hit military families and 130,000 pupils with SEND needs currently in independent schools. Of the parents I've spoken to, many use these schools as a way of giving their children that extra bit of support they would otherwise struggle to find in the state system. I would have thought that every single member of this House will recognise the challenges facing all their local authorities when it comes to SEND provision. Particularly from my involvement with the Down syndrome APPG, which my right honourable friend chairs, it's clear that getting an EHCP is already an uphill struggle. And taxing independent schools will create the most regressive possible outcome. It will add pressures already facing our local authorities, and it is the SEND children in the existing state provision who will pay the highest price. In a similar vein, and this was discussed by my honourable colleague for Surrey Heath, there are 2,666 military families in this country that rely on independent schools to give their children a stable education. For these families, VAT relief can make all the difference. I previously co-signed a letter sent to the Chancellor by my honourable friend for Solihull West and Shirley, calling on the government to protect military families making use of the continuity of education allowance from VAT. Although the Chancellor committed to re-rating CEA, I maintain that the full exemption from VAT is needed to truly support military families. I know this would make a real difference to those enlisted at either of Windsor's 2 great garrisons, to whom we owe so much to. This support should be given special consideration in the light of the Prime Minister's discussions over the weekend in the House today. Frontbenchers on the party opposite frequently refer to parents paying for independent education enjoying a tax break. But parents are actually saving the state £8,210, the money it costs to educate a child in the state sector, and receiving no compensation for the income taxes that they pay. In my book, that is no tax break at all. Frankly, the numbers just do not add up. The Adam Smith Institute estimated that even in 10% of children move into the state sector, and anecdotally in my constituency I'm seeing higher than that, any revenue will be nullified. Any more than that 10%, and the policy will actually cost taxpayers money. This, in my view, highlights the ideology behind this decision. In my view, the party opposite are playing politics with children's futures. They are forcing families to have difficult conversations mid-year and make tough decisions. And the saddest conversations I've had with parents are parents who felt the need to separate children from classes mid-year. Frankly, only a Labour government could set out with the aim of improving education in this country and introduce policies that have led to 40 school closures since the budget. Ironically... Yes, sir.
I thank you for he is talking with a great understanding about the schools in this constituency, including state and independent, which is fantastic to hear. But we've heard in this debate about full state schools in England, we've heard about overloaded schools, we've heard about underfunded schools. He will acknowledge that funding had to be found somewhere to try to fix these problems. This is one solution. Is there an alternative?
Well, my point is that this won't raise any money.
It exacerbates the problem.
It exacerbates the problem because if 10% of the students are displaced, then that nullifies the revenue. And one thing that hasn't been mentioned, I think everybody's local authorities in this House are under some kind of financial strain. In the Royal Borough of Windsor, Maidenhead, more so than others. One of the biggest exploding bills that they've got on their books is the home-to-school transport budget. Yeah. So if you create a pressure unexpectedly in the system and expect the local authorities to pay this, then that's another emerging pressure for local authorities. Is that in the numbers? I don't know. Maybe the Minister could comment. What I find even humorous, really, is it's not often on this side of the House that we agree with teachers' unions, right? But even some of the teachers' unions are raising concern about the impact of this policy on staff and pupils in state schools. After only a few months, we are seeing pupils being taken out of private school at 3 times the previous rate. We will have to wait until September to see the full extent of this damage caused, as many parents will be doing everything they can to ensure that they wait till the end of the school year before taking their children, sadly, out of the schools which they have loved. In this country, we should be aiming to set the highest standards across the board, using schools that excel in both the independent and state sector as examples of what can be achieved. Labour would rather cut down this aspiration in return for uniformity. We are also seeing this attack in their dismantling of the academy system that have blossomed under successive governments of all colours. And far from guiding the invisible hand, Labour's education policy is strangling the school system. I reject this politics of envy policy wholeheartedly. It places politics above children, families and the good of the country. But if the government is determined to stick with it, I would urge them to introduce full exemptions for all SEND children, for military families and any specialist schools. Thank you very much.